Welcome into Texans Today, everybody. I'm your host, Jeremy Chuggs, and coming up on the program today, could the Texans trade for Garrett Wilson? We actually talked about this maybe a month and a half ago here on the channel, but I think it might be a little bit more likely now than it was before. We'll be looking at the pros and the cons of a trade with Garrett Wilson. Before we get going, though, I really quickly want to give a shout out to, a couple people who really help out the channel. And if you want to help out the channel in a quick and easy way, you could share today's video on social media, on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, send it in a group text, whatever. If you could share today's video, spread the word about the channel, that would help me out a ton. Some people that I see that already do that all the time: Rhino Jimenez, Soul Rolls, HTX, Mr. Optimistic, all on X. They are always sharing my stuff. They're always retweeting, always giving me a lot of shout outs on Twitter. So I wanted to take a quick second to thank all of you for really helping out the channel a ton. I make all these videos, and without y'all, it would just be me talking into a void. But y'all are the ones that really help propel this channel forward. Y'all are the ones that help build an amazing Texans community here on the channel. So to each and every person watching today's video, thank you so much. And to all my loyal subscribers, y'all are the absolute real ones. If you could, go ahead and share today's video. Let's get right into it. Garrett Wilson, could the Texans make a trade for the Jets wide receiver? ESPN said one surprise move the Texans could make is trading for Wilson. He's on the last year of his rookie deal, and a lot of trade rumors have been flying around Wilson all off season. Obviously, there's been a lot of turmoil in New York. Aaron Rodgers, he's out. Garrett Wilson, he's wanting a new contract. And there's a lot of factors that go into it as well. I mean, the Jets have not been good in all three of Garrett Wilson's first seasons in the NFL. So it makes sense that Garrett Wilson wants out of New York. He wants a fresh start. I don't know what the Jets are going to want to ask for it, but there could be a possibility that he's on the move, especially Aaron Glenn, a new regime there in New York. They could want a totally fresh start, a total reboot of this team. And that could start with trading Garrett Wilson. Let's kind of break down kind of the parts of why it doesn't make sense, right? There's been a lot of arguments of like, it doesn't make sense. No, it doesn't make sense. I was a big proponent that it makes zero sense at all. And I'm not saying that it is a slam dunk going to happen, but I do think it's a little bit more likely. First, let's look at the trade costs. I think the trade costs won't be as crazy as people think. It'll be a lot, but I think it may be worth it if you're going to get a guy like Garrett Wilson. And with the trade that I kind of concocted around the Texans getting Garrett Wilson, I modified it a little bit from the one that I did earlier in the offseason. The Jets would be receiving the Texans' first-round pick this year, pick number 25, and a second-round pick next year. Now, before, I kind of modeled it off after the A.J. Brown trade, a first and a third, but since the Texans only have 6 picks in this year's draft, I went ahead and changed it to a first this year and then a second next season. Go down in the comment section, though, and let me know. Am I stupid? Am I crazy? Is this trade awful? Let me know your thoughts. Would you make this trade if you were the Houston Texans? If you get hit with the YouTube ad break, all good. Scroll on down and give me your thoughts on this type of trade for Houston. Now, not only do you have to trade for Garrett Wilson, but the double whammy of it is he also wants a new contract. So if you go ahead and trade for him, you're also going to have to pay him. And obviously, as Texans fans, you all know, if you've been watching any of my videos, the Texans don't have a lot of money to play around with this offseason. And the fact that he'll want a new contract if he's traded, it's a big deterrent. But I do think his cost could be somewhat reasonable, and I'll tell you why in just a moment. But let's take a look quickly at the top paid wide receivers on a per year basis in the NFL. Number 1, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb there at number 2, A.J. Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown just a little bit ahead of Brandon Ayuk, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Davante Adams, DJ Moore, and Cooper Kupp. I don't think Garrett Wilson will garner that same type of money as a CeeDee Lamb or Justin Jefferson. I actually look at him and think the Amon-Ra St. Brown, Brandon Ayuk, level tier is where he'll want to hit around $30 million a year in a contract extension. Maybe he goes up to like a 31, maybe ties A.J. Brown there at 32, which I know sounds like a lot of money. It sounds ludicrous. It sounds crazy. Like there's no way the Texans are going to make that happen because I know what y'all are all thinking. Logically you're thinking, okay, you're paying him all this money, but then Jeremy, how are the Texans going to, sign some of their big guys that they need to, some other contract extensions that they need to get done? Well, I'll tell you why in just a moment. But before I break that down, if you haven't gotten any Texans gear this year with the new logo, hey, get some hats today with our friends over at Fanatics. They're on sale. They have a bunch of different varieties, a bunch of different styles available. All you got to do, go down to chatsports.com/Texans hats, any kind you want. I like this one with the new logo, the white with the little rope on it. I think that one's pretty dope. I also like this other Texans logo with the light blue in it. And if you're going maybe on a cruise, my mom loves cruising out of Galveston. This one on a beach in Cancun, you're telling me that's not fire? Right? If you want any of these hats, if any of these piqued your interest, go check them out. That link is in the comment section and description of today's video. One more time, it's chatsports.com/Texans hats. I'll put that down below so you can check it out later on. Now, talking about the contract extensions, obviously it's the big three. You have Derek Stingley Jr., C.J. Stroud, Will Anderson Jr., who are going to be due for contracts this offseason and next offseason. So the Texans will have to pay up with some of those guys moving forward. But if you didn't catch my video earlier in the week, the Texans got great news on multiple fronts when it comes to salary cap and salary cap space growing in this year and in the years like 2027, 2028, 2029, 2030, all of those seasons. I think the Texans and how the league is moving and how the league's salary cap is growing is going to vastly benefit Houston. If you give Wilson a 4-year contract extension and backload it so the money hits when the salary cap should explode, which I explained all that in that video that I just showed you the thumbnail of, you could actually pull it off. You could make something happen with a deal for Garrett Wilson because, as I explained in that video, the salary cap in the NFL is set to explode in 2029 and 2030 because of TV rights deals. So if you're able to concoct his contract in a way where you backload all the money and it all hits later on, you could make that happen because $30 million now sounds like a lot. But when you hear of a guy like Jamar Chase wanting $40 million and some of these other contract extensions that are going to go down, just like they did with Nico Collins, paying him early, getting him his money early, that's how I want Nick Caserio to go about it, because if you pay him early and you get it done sooner rather than later, then other contracts are going to topple it, and that money actually doesn't look as bad than it would if you were to pay him late, kind of like the Dallas Cowboys do almost on every single one of their contracts. Now, I know what a lot of people are going to say as well. Jeremy, you've said multiple times on the show that the Texans can't get Trey Smith in free agency. Well, I think with the new, news around the salary cap and the salary cap expanding, it's more of a possibility than I thought it was prior. Now, dude, both of these moves, are they likely? No, I don't think the Texans make either of these moves. But let me know down below. If you could make one of these guys, make one of these moves, Trey Smith or Garrett Wilson, which one would you do? Type TS for Trey Smith, type GW for Garrett Wilson. I'm interested to hear what you have to say down below in the comments of who you would prioritize, the offensive lineman or the wide receiver. This one's tough. But if you're going all in on this season and you want to make an offseason splash, I would sign Trey Smith. Like I said, I still don't think it's likely that the Texans pull off either of these moves. But with the salary cap space growing, it's more of a possibility than it was, maybe 2 or 3 months ago before we learned of the salary cap growing this year and before we really, thought of the idea of the salary cap in 2029 and 2030 absolutely exploding. So if I had to choose between the two, I would go O-line because I think it's more important to protect C.J. Stroud, but you never know. Maybe Stroud has a little pull and he wants to get his old friend from Ohio State back in the building with him in Garrett Wilson. I do know, regardless of what move the Texans make, if the Texans make a move, when the Texans make a move, we will break it down here on the channel 100% free. This is your one-stop shop for Texans news and rumors all year long. Make sure you hit that sub button for daily Texans videos from yours truly here on Texans Today.